No one noticed the way he watched her. But he waited, quietly, patiently, until every other voice in the room faded, leaving only the two of them standing there. Mara had felt his eyes on her all evening. Not in a strange way. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable. But in a way that felt deliberate. The kind of gaze someone uses when they're trying to say something without speaking. The kind that slips past every wall you didn't even know you were still holding up. It all began at a small community event at the renovated library in their town. Nothing fancy. Just soft music, warm lights, and neighbors wandering from table to table with cups of tea in their hands. Mara had gone because she needed a break from her own thoughts. She had been carrying so much lately, quiet worries she told no one about. Not even him. And Ethan. Well, Ethan was the type to show up to every community gathering, greet people with the same steady warmth, then fade into the background once the room filled. Tonight, though, he hadn't faded. He had hovered near her. Not too close. Not too obvious. Just close enough that she kept feeling that gentle tug, like the air between them shifted whenever he walked by. At first, she tried to shake the feeling off. Maybe she had imagined the way he paused when she laughed at a friend's joke. Maybe she was imagining the way his voice softened each time he said her name. But then she looked up while she was helping pack away the last of the event supplies. And there he was again. Standing across the room. Leaning quietly against the doorway. Watching her with an expression that wasn't loud or dramatic, just full. And when she saw him, instead of looking away like most people would, Ethan held her gaze. Steady. Warm. Honest. Mara's breath caught before she could stop it. She tried to focus on folding a stack of event flyers, but her fingers hesitated, her thoughts drifting back to him even though she was fighting it. She wasn't used to being seen like that. Not lately. Her life had become a routine of doing things, fixing things, helping others, pretending she was fine. And almost no one noticed when she wasn't. But Ethan. He noticed everything quietly. Always had. When the last of the volunteers waved goodbye and stepped outside into the cool night air, Mara reached for her bag. She thought Ethan would follow the others. He usually did. But he didn't. She turned around to switch off the lights, and that's when she realized. They were the only ones left. Ethan stood near the center table, hands gently tucked into his coat pockets, eyes on her with that same steady awareness that made her heart feel like it had shifted just a little. He cleared his throat softly. Mara, do you have a moment? Her pulse rose, just enough that she felt it in her fingertips. She tried to sound casual. Sure. What's up? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow breath, like he was gathering something he had been carrying for a long time. I've been wanting to talk to you alone, he said quietly. Just, didn't want to interrupt anything earlier. Her chest tightened, but not in a painful way. More like her emotions were leaning forward before she could. She forced a small smile. About what? He looked down for a second, then lifted his eyes again, braver this time, more open. About something I should have said a while ago. The room felt smaller. Softer. More still. Outside, the wind brushed against the old library windows. Inside, Mara could feel the weight of whatever he was holding rise between them like a fragile bridge. Ethan took one slow step closer, not too close, just enough that she could sense what he wasn't saying yet. Mara, he whispered, I've been trying to find the right moment. And tonight, when everyone stepped out, it finally felt like I shouldn't wait anymore. Her breath caught again, more sharply this time. She didn't know what he was going to say next. But she knew this moment mattered. She could feel it. He drew in one last steady breath. And then everything in the room seemed to pause. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Ethan opened his mouth to speak. But the library lights flickered suddenly, cutting him off and leaving his next words hanging in the air. The moment the lights flickered, he froze like the universe had interrupted him on purpose, delaying a truth he had held onto for far too long. Mara let out a soft, surprised laugh, trying to ease the sudden tension. The old library lights were known for acting up, but tonight, the timing felt almost dramatic. Ethan glanced up at the ceiling, then back at her with a shy, apologetic smile. Guess the building wants to be part of this conversation. She shook her head lightly. It has great timing. But the smile on her face didn't match the rhythm of her heartbeat. Inside, she felt like everything in her world had tilted an inch to the left. Ethan shifted his weight, suddenly looking unsure. He had been ready to say something important, and now the moment felt delicate again. Mara stepped a bit closer, her voice gentle. It's okay. You can tell me. His eyes met hers, and the steadiness she had seen earlier returned. Not bold. Not heavy. Just sincere. I will, he said quietly. I promise. I just want to say it right. Something warm moved through her chest at the way he said that. Not rushed. Not forced. Just honest. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. I didn't plan for tonight to go like this. But when I saw you, when I watched you take care of everyone like you always do, I realized I couldn't wait much longer. Mara swallowed softly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Wait for what? He opened his mouth to answer. But before he could, the front doors of the library creaked loudly as the wind pushed against them. Both of them turned. The doors didn't open, but the noise pulled their attention long enough for the moment to shift again. Ethan stepped toward the entrance, tugging the handle just to be sure it was locked. It's just the wind, he said. But his voice carried a nervous edge now. Mara watched him for a moment. She could tell he wasn't second-guessing his feelings, he was second-guessing the timing. So she tried to help him find steadiness again. It's just us, she said softly. No rush. No pressure. Ethan paused. Then he slowly turned back toward her, and something in his expression softened even more. That's the problem, he murmured. When it's just us, it feels even harder not to say the wrong thing. Her brows lifted slightly. Ethan, you never have to be afraid of that with me. He let out a small, breathy laugh, the kind that sounded like it came from somewhere deep. Maybe. But I still want to get this right. Mara stepped closer, leaving only a few gentle feet between them. She didn't touch him. Didn't rush him. She just made it clear she was there, ready to listen. What changed? She asked quietly. Tonight, I mean. He hesitated for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice so soft she almost missed it. You looked tired. Her breath caught. Not in a bad way, he added quickly. Just, in that way you get when you're trying to hold everything together by yourself. And I realized I've been letting you do that for too long. Mara felt something in her chest pull tight, gently but unmistakably. That's not your responsibility, she whispered. I know, he said. But I still care. More than I should have let myself care without telling you. His voice cracked just slightly on the last words, almost too subtle to catch. But she heard it. She felt it. Mara stepped even closer now, her voice warm and steady. Ethan, how long have you felt that way? He let out a slow breath. A while. Longer than you'd think. And you waited until we were alone to tell me? I needed a moment where nothing else could get in the way, he said quietly. No noise. No people. Just you and me. The room grew still again. Not heavy, just full. Mara's heart beat a little faster as she looked at him. Ethan wasn't dramatic. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't the type to speak unless he meant every word. So whatever he was holding, it wasn't small. He took one careful step toward her. Not too close. Just enough that she felt the shift in the air again. Mara, he whispered, there's something I need to say before I lose my nerve. Her breathing stilled. His eyes softened, filling with something unspoken but unmistakably real. And then, he drew in a steady breath to finally speak. Just as someone knocked sharply on the library window, making both of them jump. The moment shattered again, hanging by a thread. The knock was so sudden, so sharp, that both of them froze, two hearts suspended in a moment neither of them had been ready to lose. Mara instinctively stepped back, her hand pressing lightly against her chest as her breath caught. Ethan turned toward the window, brows drawn tight with confusion. The library was usually quiet at this hour. Everyone had left. The street outside was calm, wrapped in that soft, sleepy stillness that came after a long community evening. So who would knock now? Ethan took a cautious step toward the window. Probably someone who forgot something, he murmured, though his voice held uncertainty. Mara followed a few steps behind him. Not fearful, just unsettled by the interruption. Whatever he had been seconds from saying, it had mattered. Deeply. Ethan stopped about an arm's length from the window and peered outside. The porch light flickered, casting soft, uneven shadows across the entrance. But the walkway was empty. No person. No movement. Not even the faint shape of someone walking away. That's strange, he whispered. Mara moved closer, standing beside him now. She leaned forward just enough to see for herself. Nothing. Just a quiet night and the distant sound of a car passing 2 streets over. Maybe it was the wind, she offered gently, though she knew the sound hadn't been anything like that. Ethan shook his head slowly. It was too clear. Too deliberate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them carried a mix of unanswered questions, the knock, yes, but also the one sentence he still hadn't said. Finally, Ethan stepped back from the window and exhaled. Guess someone changed their mind. But Mara could see the tension in his shoulders. Not fear, just the weight of another moment slipping away from him. She reached out, brushing her fingertips lightly against his sleeve. You were saying something. He froze. The kind of freeze that wasn't physical, it was emotional. Like he was trying to decide whether to step forward or step back. Mara, he whispered, voice thinning with uncertainty. She held his gaze. Warm. Inviting. Patient. You don't have to say it perfectly, she said softly. You just have to say it honestly. Those words seemed to steady him. Slowly, he lifted his hand and rested it against the edge of the table beside him, grounding himself. Then he nodded. Once. Small but resolute. Okay, he said. I'll tell you. Her pulse quickened. Ethan took one slow breath. Then another. Then looked directly into her eyes with a sincerity so open it nearly made her breath falter. I've been holding something in for too long, he began. And I kept convincing myself it wasn't the right moment. That you had enough on your mind. That I shouldn't add anything to your life that might complicate things. Mara listened quietly, her heart tightening at the tenderness in his voice. But tonight, he continued, I watched you move around the room. I watched the way you smiled even when you were tired. I watched the way you helped people even when you looked like you needed someone to help you. Her throat tightened. And I realized, he said softly, that the only thing I'm afraid of now is staying silent. She felt her breath catch. Not from surprise, but from the quiet vulnerability in his tone. Mara, he whispered, I. Another sound cut him off. Not a knock. Not a voice. Just the soft, echoing clang of the old radiator pipes settling in the back corner of the room. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to break his words apart mid-sentence. He closed his eyes in frustration for half a second, rubbing the bridge of his nose with a weak laugh. I swear this building is testing me. Mara smiled warm, amused, a little emotional. It's not the building, she said gently. I think you're just nervous. He opened his eyes, meeting hers again. I am. Why? Because telling the truth means everything might change. Mara's heart softened at that. Yes, she whispered. But not all change is bad. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. The kind of moment that felt like it gathered every feeling he had held back for months. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Just one step. But it felt like crossing a threshold he had been afraid to approach. Mara, he said, voice barely more than breath, the thing I've been trying to tell you is. The library's front door handle rattled suddenly. Both of them spun toward the sound. Someone was trying to open the locked door. Mara's eyes widened. Ethan reached instinctively toward her, not touching her, but moving in front of her just slightly, protective without being dramatic. The handle rattled again. Firmer this time. Then a voice from outside called softly through the door. Hello. Is anyone still inside? The moment, once so close to something honest and fragile, shifted again into uncertainty. And whatever Ethan had been about to say, still remained unspoken. The voice on the other side of the door was calm, almost gentle, but the timing could not have been worse. All the words Ethan had been building toward slipped right out of reach again. Mara and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. Not frightened, just startled, suspended in a moment that felt interrupted for the third time in one night. Ethan stepped closer to the door, keeping his tone steady. "Just a moment," he called out. Mara followed a few steps behind, her heart still wrapped around the things Ethan hadn't yet said. Ethan unlocked the door carefully and pulled it open a few inches. Standing on the porch was Mrs. Calloway, the elderly woman who lived on the corner across from the library. She clutched a small knitted scarf in her hands, looking apologetic. "Oh, dear," she said with a soft laugh, "I wasn't sure anyone was still inside. I saw the lights flicker and thought maybe someone got stuck." Ethan's shoulders relaxed, though a hint of disappointment passed over his face. "Everything's fine," he assured her. "Just finishing up." Mrs. Calloway nodded kindly. "Well, I won't keep you too. I just found this outside after everyone left. Someone dropped it, and I thought I should return it before morning." She lifted the scarf. Mara recognized it instantly. It belonged to one of the volunteers who had left early. "Oh, thank you," Mara said warmly as she took it. "We'll make sure it gets back to her." Mrs. Calloway smiled and gave a small wave. "You both take care now. These old buildings love to play tricks at night." Then she headed down the path, her steps slow but steady. When the door closed again, the room felt unusually quiet. Not empty, just waiting. Ethan turned back toward Mara, letting out a deep breath. "That's the third interruption." Mara let out a soft laugh, even though her heart was still tense with anticipation. "At this point, I'm starting to think the universe is trying to make you work for it." He huffed a gentle laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Maybe." Mara held the scarf against her chest for a moment before setting it on a nearby table. Then she turned toward him fully. "Ethan," she said softly, "you don't have to tell me everything tonight if it feels too heavy." He shook his head immediately, firm, but not forceful. "No. I want to say it. I need to say it. I'm just trying to breathe." Mara stepped closer. Not rushing him. Just closing the distance enough that he wouldn't feel alone in whatever he was carrying. He looked at her, eyes soft, full of layered emotion. "I'm sorry this is coming out in pieces," he murmured. She shook her head gently. "Pieces are okay." He exhaled a long, steady breath that seemed to settle something inside him. The building creaked softly, as if even it was trying not to interrupt this time. Ethan leaned one hand against the table beside him, steadying himself. "When I said I've been keeping something in, I meant it. More than you probably realize." Mara felt her heart squeeze. "Ethan. I'm not good with timing," he said gently. "I'm not good with big emotional confessions either. I'm the guy who thinks things through too many times before opening his mouth." Mara smiled softly. "I know. But tonight," he continued, "watching you, something shifted. Not because you looked tired. Not because you were helping everyone. But because I realized how much of my day revolves around noticing you." Her breath stilled. He looked down briefly, gathering courage. "I watch the way you help people even when you don't feel your best. The way you show up for everyone without ever asking for anything back. The way you smile, even when you're carrying things alone." Mara's eyes softened, a sheen of emotion pulling at the edges. "And somewhere along the way," he whispered, "those little things stopped being little to me." She swallowed. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Ethan." He lifted his gaze to hers again, steady, quiet, full of earnest bravery. "I care about you," he said. "More deeply than I've let myself admit. And I keep hesitating to say it because I don't want to make your life more complicated. But staying silent feels worse." Mara felt the world tilt gently around them. Not overwhelming. Not dramatic. Just real. The honesty in his voice settled into her chest like warmth she hadn't realized she needed. "And I know things might change," he continued. "I know saying this means stepping into something uncertain. But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel is small." The room seemed to exhale with him. Mara stepped even closer now, so close she could see the slight tremble in his hands, the quiet sincerity in every line of his expression. Her voice was soft. "Ethan, thank you for trusting me with that." He breathed out, relief and fear mixed together. "There's more I want to say. But I need to know something first." "What is it?" He hesitated only for a moment. "Do you feel anything close to what I feel?" he whispered. The air between them grew still. Gentle. Heavy. Unmistakably tender. Mara opened her mouth, ready to speak. But before she could answer, the library's clock tower rang outside, a deep, echoing chime that filled the room and pulled both of them into silence. Ethan's question hung between them, fragile, waiting. The clock tower's chime echoed through the library like a slow, steady heartbeat, each note stretching the silence between them until it felt almost fragile. Mara didn't speak right away. Not because she was unsure, but because she wanted to answer him with the same care he had shown her. Ethan stood perfectly still, watching her with eyes full of hope and fear woven together. He wasn't demanding an answer. He wasn't rushing her. He was simply waiting. The way he had been waiting all night, and maybe much longer than that. When the final chime faded, the room grew calm again. Mara took a soft breath and stepped closer. Close enough that the warmth of his presence brushed gently against her. Close enough that he lifted his head slightly, as if bracing for whatever truth she was about to offer. "Ethan," she whispered, "I didn't realize how much I needed someone to see me, until I realized you already had." He blinked slowly, like he was absorbing every syllable. She continued, voice warm and steady. "You notice the things I don't say. The moments when I'm tired. The times when I pretend I'm fine. And you don't push, you just stay. That means more than you know." Ethan's breath caught, his shoulders easing just a little. Mara looked down for a moment, gathering her courage, then lifted her gaze again. "And yes," she said softly, "I feel something too." A quiet, emotional relief washed across his face, gentle, disbelieving, almost shy. Not overwhelming. Not dramatic. Just real. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything," Mara went on. "I didn't want to make things complicated either. And I didn't know if you felt the same." Ethan let out a breath that sounded like it carried weeks, maybe months, of held-back emotion. "I've felt this for a long time," he admitted quietly. She smiled then, small, warm, unmistakably sincere. "I think I have too. I just didn't realize it until tonight." The library lights hummed faintly above them. The building, for once, didn't interrupt. Ethan stepped closer, slow and careful, as if giving her space to pull back. She didn't. Now only a few soft inches separated them. Not too close, just close enough to feel the weight of everything unspoken finally settling into place. "What happens now?" Ethan asked quietly, almost as if he were afraid to break the moment. Mara smiled again, gentle, thoughtful. "I don't know. But maybe we don't have to figure everything out tonight." He nodded, relief melting into something quietly hopeful. "No pressure," he agreed. "Just honesty. And patience," she added softly. "You're very good at that." He let out a warm laugh under his breath. "I've had a lot of practice." For a moment, they simply stood there letting the newness of this truth settle around them. Not rushing it. Not forcing it. Just holding space for something real. After a long, peaceful silence, Mara spoke again. "Ethan." "Yes. Thank you, for waiting until it was just the two of us. I don't think I could have heard your heart in a crowded room." His eyes softened with the kind of emotion that didn't need explaining. "I only wanted you to hear it when you were ready," he whispered. She felt her chest warm at that, an emotion so gentle it almost ached. Ethan looked around the quiet library, then back at her. "Should we head out? It's getting late." Mara nodded. "We should." They walked toward the door side by side. Not touching. But their steps fell into a natural rhythm, as if their hearts had already begun to find the same pace. Ethan held the door open for her, and she stepped out into the cool night air. The street was calm, soft with the glow of distant porch lights. When he joined her outside, he paused, hands tucked nervously into his coat pockets. "Mara," he said softly, "I know tonight was a lot. We don't have to define anything yet. I just want you to know I'm here. She met his eyes gently. I know. And that's enough. For a moment, it felt like the entire night held them still, two people standing on the edge of something new, something delicate, something quietly beautiful. Ethan offered a small, hopeful smile. Can I walk you home? Mara hesitated for only a heartbeat. Not from uncertainty, but from the soft emotional weight of the night. Yes, she said. I'd like that. And as they started down the quiet street together, their steps side by side, it felt like the first calm moment after a long storm. The kind where everything finally settles, and something new quietly begins. A night that had been full of pauses, interruptions, and unsaid words had finally ended with honesty. And that honesty felt like the beginning of everything.